The first two tips that I want to give for especially for beginner painters are actually before you start your painting, and you will thank me, especially if you're a beginner and struggling with painting. So the first thing is have your reference photo on a smaller in a smaller size than your actual painting. So this when for instance, I have it on my phone here. And then the second tip is to make sure you adjust the aspect ratio of your paper to your reference, or the way you intend to see it. So for me in this case, the aspect ratio was quite wide since it was on my phone, and I liked that how the path and the tree in the reference photo are occupy two different sides of this long rectangular image. And so I retaped my sketchbook so that I get a similar sized canvas to work on. And I think it's something that I did not understand before. I always had the tape on the sides of my page, and it always threw me off. And I never formally learned drawing, so maybe it's something that others learn off the bat. But for me, I was like, why are my drawings not, or my paintings not turning out the way I want them? They would just be squished or stretched because my aspect ratio was not right. So make sure you have the right sized or the right aspect ratio of your canvas. And then I also want to recommend having a very simple reference photo. In this case, I have it's from a walk that I took at the beginning of this month, and the spring was just this is the onset of spring, and it was still cold, but some small flowers were blooming, and the grass was really green. The grass does not appear that green in the reference photo. One of the reasons is because I have a blue light filter on my phone, so everything appears more yellow, but it also in person appeared more green to me. So I'm going to take the liberty of making it more green in my painting. I'm not going to be a slave to my reference, as it's just to help me out in some cases, but I can still go away from it. So again, I want to really emphasize having a simple reference photo. So in this case, it's basically just the sky and the grassy hill, or the field that you see. And then there's the tree, which I think is important. That's the reason why I clicked the photo, because the tree was there. I want the tree to be there. And I think the path that is on the hill also is adding to the perspective and the distance. So I want to keep the path as well. But if you really consider like big broad shapes, there's the sky that I'm starting to put in now, and I'm just putting a blue color. I won't don't worry about which blue. Is it ultramarine, or just pick a blue and run with it. It will look good. Always start from light and then go to dark in most cases in watercolor, and there are times when you want to go dark at the very beginning, but in most paintings it's always wise to start light and darken it as you go. And the good thing about sky is the skies can look like whatever you make them to be. So this can be a good time to just play around and see what kinds of brush strokes make what kinds of clouds, especially wet on wet. It's quite fun. You can try spraying some water, which I don't think I did. I wanted to keep the sky more flat and then have more texture in the foreground. And really try to in this process as well, I've tried to divide it based on the three big shapes that I'm seeing: the sky, the field, and the path. And then there's the little tree, or quite a big tree. I might even make at this point I was trying to decide how big I want the tree to be, and I decided to actually draw it a little bit bigger than it actually appears in the photo, because in person it did appear quite big. So again, it's that with painting you can choose to really draw exactly as your reference, but you have all the right to make changes and make the painting truly yours. And now, so here's what I'm doing. It's an interesting technique. So I've added more water at the base of the sky, so you can see this bead coming up, and I have tilted my sketchbook so the bead is at the bottom. So now when I add the green color for the field in, the one thing is I'll have a very smooth transition. If I wait for the sky to dry and then put the field on, the transition between the two will be very sharp, and that's not what I want. I want to show that the field keeps going for a while, and that's why I need a smooth transition. So as you see, I'm slowly putting in the green, and I'm tilting the book downward because I wouldn't mind if some of the blue got in the green, but I don't want my green color to migrate upwards into the sky because I want to keep the field mostly flat. And this is such a useful technique, just trying to move the angle of your canvas while painting. And I think in many of the other videos that you see, I think that they are so sped up that it's hard to really see what's going on in terms of the painting technique. So I'm happy I can show you in this sort of a longer, slower video. Do let me know what you guys think about this format. I'm happy to do more of these if people are interested and people are trying it out. Would be great to hear from you. Or do you just enjoy watching the paintings and listening to stories? That's also great because I do not plan to stop that. I really enjoy telling my stories through the paintings, but it's also nice to be able to share some painting techniques and enable people to put their own stories on canvas. It definitely helps solidify memories, and I think it's great for personal just for personal growth. You tend to just remember more things, happy times, as you flip through a book like this. And again, like this is what these kind of simple paintings is what I mostly do. So when you see me make more elaborate turtles or portraits or more intricate landscapes on a big canvas, those are rare occasions when I have a lot of time and I have time to record. In most cases, I just want to paint something. I want to keep this habit alive. So once every few days, I'll just sit down, think of a memory, look through my phone, see if I can find a photo. Sometimes I'll go on walks with this intention of bringing some inspiration back to paint. Sometimes it's something I see on the social media, but definitely just even if it's a simple painting, I would highly recommend having at least somewhat of an habit. You don't have to be as intense as me trying to paint a few times, but it's fun, it's relaxing. Totally like positive addition to my life has been this habit of painting. So yeah, this going back in, if you see the way I've painted the field, it's not all green, and even though it might appear when you're actually looking at it that it's all green, it's often a mix of colors, right? There's green, which is the new blades of grass that are growing. There is yellow from the old dead blades of grasses. You can see the soil through it. Maybe there are some flowers and the colors of the flowers. So the colors keep changing, and also the light keeps reflecting differently. So it's impossible to capture all that detail and nuance in color. But what you can do is just keep varying the colors. So if you see the field, I've added some reds and yellows in there. You have some light areas, and I'll make some darker areas as well, especially near the path. I think that's super cool how the curvature of the path shows you the geography of the landscape. So here's something interesting. I'm going to go in with a spray bottle. You can use any kind of spray bottle for this. Because the paint on the field is not completely dry. It's lost its sheen, but it's still a little bit wet, and I wanted to create some watercolor blooms and some texture in it. So I just gave it a little bit of spray. I used a paper to cover my sky, because again I want the sky to be a little bit flat and not ask for more attention, but I did want the field to really have more texture and show that there's a lot going. There's spring, capture that spring essence. There's a lot of activity, plants are growing, bees are buzzing, and that creates texture. So just adding a little bit of spray in there. Also, I think the blooms might appear like dandelions, maybe, because there were dandelions in this field. But you keep trying things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I'm not sure how these are going to turn out. Maybe somewhat convincing dandelions, but most likely it will be a learning experience. And that's another reason why I think it's so important to do these smaller, easier paintings, but just keep painting, because then we keep accumulating knowledge. And it's called like brush miles. So just get your brush miles and you will be good at it. And I think I largely credit all of my improvement over the last year in painting to not necessarily trying to do ambitious painting, but just doing simple paintings, but doing them regularly, and having that on the back of your mind that maybe I have to like always look for things to paint. And so I am also more aware of my surroundings now, because I always have an eye out for a reference or to see some interesting light and shadow, and I think that helps me live my life more fully in many ways. First is that I'm like aware and I'm looking for things to paint, but then there's also the aspect of painting itself that really solidifies a memory. So for instance, this walk I took, I probably would have forgotten it in a few weeks or a few months, but now that I'm painting it and making this video, now this walk is going to be much more memorable than otherwise. Now at this stage I'm putting in the slightly darker grass that is growing by the path, and I think it's super important, because again I can bring out the curvature of the path. So if this was flat, like a flat field, the path would have been just two parallel lines merging into a point. It would be completely straight, but the fact that it is curved shows that this hill has a geometry. It's not completely flat. So that curvature is actually really important, and you'll see me try to bring out more of that curvature. I think I might make it slightly more curvy than the reference photo to really show that it's like a small hill, and then also the adding some taller grasses or hints of some small bushes on the right side, because there's going to be a tree on the left. I want something to balance that tree on the right, just something that is interesting but doesn't capture as much of interest as the tree does. And it's also there's another thing, like it might be tempting to this my phone screen keeps doing that, it keeps turning off after certain amount of time, but I think it's what I was saying is that my main subject in this painting is actually the tree, and I haven't even started it yet. And I think this is also a really important tip that I would give beginners, is do not judge your painting till it's done, because sometimes we leave the most interesting details and things that will capture most attention till the very end. And this is like after painting for 14 minutes now, I am putting the tree in, and it's also an interesting process, because you have to sort of wait for the paper to dry, and then you're thinking about where exactly I'm going to put the branches, because in the reference photo you can't really see the branches very clearly, so I have to rely more on my memory and just what kind of a tree I want to show. right? If I could have shown like a conifer here if I wanted to have like a big pine tree or something, but this tree probably looks like a maple that is just starting to get some leaves back, and I'll try to get that texture of those small new leaves by using the edge of the brush and just scribbling around, and that just creates these random patterns that hopefully will read as leaves on the tree. Another thing that I did want to include in this painting was some flowers, because there were flowers coming out and there's no way I could capture them in my reference photo because they're tiny flowers. But in the painting, I think I will. I do it. Go towards the end. Go and splatter just yellow and orange colors to bring out that magic. It makes it more unrealistic of a painting, more impressionistic, I would say. But to me, it does capture the essence of my walk on that day. I do also want to talk a little bit more about using a smaller sized reference photo than the actual painting. So when I first began, I would try to have the reference photo on my computer and I would keep zooming in to see the details so I can paint most accurately, but that always is more overwhelming and you will end up overworking if you see too many details, but it's hard to show those details on paint. So I will always recommend, even when you're painting a larger size, just always have your reference photo to be smaller than your painting, because on its own you will have to you see less details, so it's easier to see bigger shapes, it's easier to simplify, and then you don't feel because if you make a small mistake or like you deviate from the reference, you probably don't notice it when the reference is so small. It's more forgiving and you just have a better time painting. You're less worried like, is this branch going right or left or up or down? I don't even care because I can't see the branches in my reference. I just know that there's a tree and I have to draw branches and sort of make it look like a blob at the distance. It's also important, again, it's like I feel like I have to have a really good tutorial. I have to really divide each and every aspect of painting because there's so many things going on. But I do want you to look at my palette for a moment and see how thick the paint is. At the beginning it was very watery, and as the painting gets more finished, more closer to finished, automatically you will notice that you use thicker paint to have darker lines, and this is sort of a good indication saying that okay, you are on the next step of painting, is like doing the details. You'll automatically, and if you're doing details and if you like notice that your paint is too thin, then it might be a good reminder like, wait, I'm doing the details, I need to have thicker paint just because it's easier to control, and then you can make more prominent lines and shapes with it. So here, as I said, I'm deviating a little bit from the reference and making the path more curvy than it already was. And I've done this by scrubbing. So I have clean water on my brush and I gently scrub the paper to lift off a little bit of paint, and then I dab it off with some tissue paper. And I'll do this at both ends. It also helps me make the edge more sharp in some ways. But I don't do a lot of it, if you've seen, like just a tiny bit, because if you try to lift up big sections, it won't look that good. Now it's time for some splattering. Really enjoy doing this, and I'm using almost like pure pigment, like thick paint, to do these splatters. I hope they're visible on the camera. Really, I think this is when you can really like, you're thinking about when to stop the painting. Is it done? Should I add more? Will adding more things make it better or ruin it? And you won't know it until you ruin a few paintings. And I think it's a part of the process. So I would say keep adding, and if you think it's getting overworked, stop and call the painting done. But yeah, there's really no good way to know when to stop painting. Also, whether sometimes I go back and look at paintings from like a few months ago, and I'm like, yeah, that painting's done, but now I'm seeing like a few things I could add, and I go through this really internal ethical and moral dilemma of whether I should rework a painting that I've already called it, said it's done. Um, and I always don't have a clear answer to that. Now I'm going in and making just really bringing out the curvature of the path even more, and this is actually I'm not even touching the path. I'm just trying to put darker pigment around it, because to just create more contrast. If you want to create interest, create contrast. When you put the lightest light in your paper right next to the darkest dark, that is going to attract attention. That's going to show that aspect is important, and in this case it is like the path going into the distance is important, and that's why the darkest dark and the lightest light are on the path. And then there are also significantly darker areas on the tree, opposed to a lighter sky. Another good way to show perspective is to make the closer or the closer part of your path to be a little bit more darker, and just add more texture to it. Because if you think of a road or a path, like a dirt path like this, you would see the pebbles and the little stones and sand, and you'll see more details in it when it's closer to you. But if you're looking further away into the path, you don't see it. So again, create that visual impression just by adding a few lines, few dots, and making it a little bit darker. Will really help you with the perspective, and everything just connects when you have this gradient of light to dark as you go into the distance. So things closer to you can add a little bit more darkness into it, not a lot. So if you see, the path is still quite light, it just has a little bit more darker tones to it, closer to where we are. And now again, I'm just playing around. Don't really think the painting is almost done, and I'm just thinking to myself whether I should do something else, or just remove the tape. And sometimes I'll remove the tape and give it another good look and see if anything else needs to change. But I think that does look good enough. Again, this is like not the best painting, but it's not supposed to be. It's something for my practice. It's something to just get those painting miles, try something new, and frame a memory, have a memory. It's more of a painting I've done for myself than to show anyone else necessarily. But I'm glad I recorded it, because I think this does help me make a slightly different video. And here I'm going with a Sharpie just to make a little bit of a frame for this painting. Just again, it's my sketchbook. Sometimes I will write on the sketchbook some fun details, or just the time and the date, or the place where I saw or the thought of this reference. I'll probably put that in. I believe this is actually the last or the second to last page of this sketchbook. So I've been waiting to finish this sketchbook for a while. I've been working on it, and my goal was at the end I will have a sketchbook tour. So do look forward to it. It will probably also be a longer video, probably coming in a few weeks, of the sketchbook tour of the sketchbook you see me work in, and that will also show you a good progression of my last few months of learning to paint in watercolor. and see and slowly starting to I don't know, I hope it looks like I'm getting good at it. I wrote spring is here and taking some final looks at it. Looks good. Again, it's a simple painting, but something that I believe anyone can do and enjoy, and continue to grow your own style of painting.
Hey there, thank you so much. If you stuck around until the end of the video, do let me know what you thought about this longer format of like this like paint along style videos. Also let me know if you tried to paint along. You can share your painting and art with me at on Instagram at Indian Guy Creates. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you do not miss another video. See you next time.